Alright guys, let's see if I can beat the bell. So, essential questions for today, we're talking about Reconstruction. What were the various plans to bring southern states back into the Union and to protect newly emancipated slaves? Why did freedmen and black Americans even need that protection in the first place? What happened? Why they needed it? What rights were gained during Reconstruction? And how were the rights of African Americans limited during and also shortly after Reconstruction? How has that all changed? How do we go from this time period where blacks could vote and participate in government to a time period where their rights were extremely limited, and then you end up with segregation, Jim Crow, and all that? So, let's progress. So, Reconstruction, what is it? So it is a time period from 1865 to 1877, essentially when the U.S. government has tried to figure out a plan to readmit the southern states into the Union and rebuild the South. Because of all the warfare that has occurred there, because of all the fighting, the South does need to be rebuilt because of all the destruction that has occurred. So, the goals of Reconstruction, the government had to readmit those seceded southern states back into the Union. Also, they needed to end slavery with the passage of the 13th Amendment. That will be fulfilled. So, the 13th Amendment, keep that in mind, very important, does end slavery. And lastly, they need to rebuild the South after all of that fighting. That 4 years of fighting is really going to wreck the southern economy and also the southern infrastructure. So, as the Civil War is coming to an end, President Lincoln, before he is assassinated, does come up with a Reconstruction plan that is really encapsulated in this quote by him, with malice towards none and charity for all. He wanted to have kind of this idea of forgiveness. We're going to forgive the South for what ended up happening, or what was occurring during the Civil War. They want to come back into the Union. Let that be the case. Let's just forgive them. But there was really no guidelines within the Constitution on how it is a state would be readmitted into the Union once they left. There's only this idea of states can... Alright, sorry y'all got interrupted there. So, to pick up, there was only this idea that states could leave from the Union in the Constitution. However, there wasn't this precedent of how it is that they should be able to return to it. So the president has to come up with this way in which these states can re-enter, and Congress also has to figure out as well, and they just really don't see eye to eye. Lincoln doesn't see eye to eye with Congress, Johnson doesn't see eye to eye with Congress, and Congress doesn't see eye to eye with them. They just don't agree on the process through which these southern states should be readmitted. So we're going to talk about those plans real quickly. First off, Lincoln's plan is one of forgiveness, and it's a very easy and simple one when it comes to the terms through which the South and those southern states have to go through to re-enter into the Union. So first off, to be re-entered, the Confederate states need to have at least 10% of their population, so like 10% of the population of South Carolina, swear an oath of loyalty to the United States, and also southern states have to ratify and accept the 13th Amendment as well to abolish slavery. Everybody that fought against the Union, that fought in the Confederacy, even the military leaders, once they swore that oath of loyalty, would receive a full presidential pardon. So they would not face a treason charge or jail time or anything such as that. So Lincoln's plan is really one of forgiveness. It's very forgiving. Radical Republicans in Congress, the very right-wing Republicans, they did not like Lincoln's plan because they felt like it was way too lenient on these ex-Confederates, on these Confederates that had fought against the United States, that had fought for the survival of slavery. And so they're going to want a stricter means through which to punish these ex-Confederates, and also a stricter means to re-accept these southern states as well. The Radical Republicans really want the Southerners to make sure that they don't do something like this again, that they are accepted back into the Union, not because we forgive them, but because they feel sorry for what it is that they did. So, the Radical Republican plan at this point, which is called the Wade-Davis Bill, so keep that in mind, that's the Wade-Davis Bill. This is going to require 50% of the state citizens instead of 10% like Lincoln's to swear that oath of loyalty, and it also bans ex-Confederate leaders from serving in government. So someone like Robert E. Lee would not have been able to serve in government for the remainder of his life. So they would essentially be disgraced individuals within the United States. And also with that 50% requirement, it's going to be much more difficult for the states to re-enter the Union. So when the Civil War does end, though, Lincoln does end up getting assassinated, so his plan doesn't come into play at all. And so Johnson, after Lincoln is assassinated, is going to take over. And Johnson has his own plan for Reconstruction as well. Johnson, of course, being President Lincoln's VP, he's going to take over and be president from 1865 to 1867. So Johnson's plan was lenient on Confederate states because he wanted the South to make sure that it is able to rejoin very quickly. He wanted to get Reconstruction rolling. So in order for him to do that, he wanted to make sure that it was lenient on the South. The radical Republicans in Congress did not like that because Johnson was a Southerner. He was from Tennessee, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure that's right. I'll correct that in class if that is incorrect. But Johnson was a Southerner, and so a lot of radical Republicans felt like he was a pro-Southern individual, that he was fighting essentially for these Confederates and for their betterment, which in some ways he was, but he really, the main reason for it is he just really wants to get Reconstruction rolling. So, ex-Confederate states could rejoin the Union according to Johnson's plan once they ratified the 13th Amendment. And it also did not require Southern state governments to protect former slaves. So, Johnson's plan, which is put into action, does not require state governments to protect former slaves. Laws that protect them or anything such as that, that does not need to happen according to Johnson's plan because it is so limited on the amount of requirements that it makes of the Southern states. Really, all you need is the 13th Amendment, slavery is over, and then you could join back into the Union, and it's all well and good and fine. So Southern states are going to end up passing these things called black codes once Reconstruction begins and Johnson's plan starts. And what black codes do is they're going to essentially limit what it is African Americans in the South can do. Whether you are an ex-slave or not, whether you were a freeman your entire life, it does not matter. So it limits them from doing such things as working jobs or gaining land or being protected by the law itself. It also limits the things that you can do just with your free time. You can't be out past midnight. If you're out and about and you don't have a note from a white person that says where it is you're going or what it is you're doing, you could be arrested just for being black and out at night. If you don't have a job as a black person, you could face jail time. So these black codes, they're very, very unfair laws that are specifically targeting black Americans, specifically in the South, to try and limit their rights and limit their ability to progress themselves and better themselves within the South. It's just a racist way to keep black individuals down. So radical Republicans are going to respond very harshly to Johnson's Reconstruction Plan, and so they're going to push for a lot of laws that protect black Americans in the South, since Johnson's Reconstruction Plan is not doing that. And you have the black codes and things such as that going on. One of the big individuals pushing for that is a very, very radical Republican. His name's Thaddeus Stevens. So, in 1865, as a response to these black codes and also just a general response to the Civil War and the beginning of Reconstruction, the Freedmen's Bureau is going to be created. And so what this is going to do is its main intention is to help former slaves. It provides them with food, it provides them with housing, and it also provides them with medical supplies or medical help should they be needed. Also, there's the promise of you get your 40 acres and a mule so that you can own your own land and be able to use that land, but that actually is never really delivered upon. So that doesn't actually happen. But the Freedmen's Bureau is really there to help former slaves, and also the Freedmen's Bureau not only helps former slaves, but it also helps poor whites within the South that have had their homes destroyed or their lives decimated, because these poor whites, unlike these wealthy former plantation owners, they can't recover as quickly or really recover at all without some sort of governmental assistance. So agents are sent down by Northerners into the South by these radical Republicans to make sure that everything was working the way that it should be. But the most important legacy of the Freedmen's Bureau is not the help that it provided in terms of the food or the medical supplies or the housing. The most important portion of it are the new schools that are created as a result of the Freedmen's Bureau, because now you have black Americans, freedmen, and whatnot that are now being educated, whereas before that really wasn't happening. Here's the enrollment rates of black Americans here down here in the green, and you see after, here's about 1865, you see this really start to increase a significant percentage. Also, you see a migration of people from the North to the South. Those individuals were mostly abolitionists, but some of them were what's called profiteers, or people that wanted to take advantage of black Americans in the South by employing them or starting businesses down there or whatnot. These individuals were called carpetbaggers. These are Northerners that are moving from the North to the South during Reconstruction. This just shows some of the black colleges that are created shortly following the end of the Civil War, thanks to the Freedmen's Bureau. All the blue ones were black colleges that existed prior to the Civil War, and all the red ones are the ones that were created afterwards. So you can see, I mean, it's just astounding to see the amount of colleges that just start to grow out of this Reconstruction and out of the Freedmen's Bureau.